he was a solid, loyal National Party cabinet minister. He did as what was required and what was considered necessary by the apartheid government. He was loyal until he wasn't loyal, because he became one of the few ministers to actually repent and go to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And then lead a life of charity, interestingly. He devoted his life after that to good deeds, to feeding the poor, to housing the poor, in a humble and quiet way. And of course, he famously went to wash the feet of Reverend Frank Chikane in the Union buildings, because he was Minister of Police when they attempted to poison Chikane terribly in 1988 or 89. He really oversaw terrible, the most repressive time, the time when the police were completely rampant in areas like the Vaal Triangle, the East Rand. The police were killing people. And they were systematically assassinating people. It was the time of Vlakplaas, and lots of murders. And he was the person politically responsible for the police and the security police that were doing most of these deeds.
If you were to take us down memory lane, in your observation and your recollection, what are the most atrocious things that happened under his watch, historically, example of those atrocities?
A few things come to mind. The murder of the Cradock Four, a brutal, horrible murder of 4 people who were doing no more than leading resistance, and much admired young men. He gave the order, or he was in the Security Council that gave the order to deal with them, and that was taken to mean kill them, and they were killed and burnt in their car in a most brutal fashion. And then their funerals were banned, leading to more unrest. It was an escalating unrest and brutality. Another one I would cite would be killings by the Vlakplaas crew. You recall the incident where they tricked 10 people into coming across the border and then brutally shot them in cold blood in their vehicle. I would cite the poisoning of Frank Chikane, because that is so cruel. They put poison, they opened his suitcase at the airport and put poison in his underwear, so that he got very ill while he was in the US, and very nearly died. A very significant one was the bombing of Cosatu House. Cosatu House was an important center where Cosatu was based, and Cosatu was of course a pinnacle of the resistance movement in the late 1980s, and they couldn't deal with it. They bombed the building so that Cosatu couldn't operate there. They did it at night, so at least not too many people were hurt. But it was that kind of illegal, even by their own law, it was illegal activity. And it meant that we lived in a terribly brutal time when activists had to live with the awareness that they could be killed at any time, either just in a protest because police would open fire, or they would systematically hunt people down, as they did, for example, with the Cradock Four. So it's difficult now to recall just how callous and brutal and bloody and ugly it was. And I think now that we live in a democracy, we often forget how tough it was, how risky it was, what courage it took for people to resist in that time.